this is our final critical lens that we are looking at for this course, and it is called New Historicism. We will be considering it when we are discussing Othello and Hamlet. So what New Historicism is it takes a work of literature and connects it back to the social, historical, political, and cultural movements of its time. So basically, its theory is that literature is going to be influenced by the history that was surrounding it when it was written, and history is then going to influence the literature that is made. So it kind of becomes a circle that keeps sort of going and going. For example, we're not studying Macbeth, but Macbeth is a play by Shakespeare that's very much a product of its time. There's witches in Macbeth, and witch hunts were in full swing. King James had just ascended to the throne, and they were big believers in the divine right of kings back then, which basically meant that if you were a king, you were ordained by God and you had kingly blood, and everything about you was meant to be king. So Macbeth is a play about a man who kills the king and things go horribly for him and he dies. So there's the message there that reinforces the divine right of kings. And additionally, there's a character named Banquo in Macbeth whose descendants go on to become king, and King James happens to have an ancestor named Banquo, so it's sort of a subtle nod to King James, and it reinforces how that play was created for him, and it reinforces his right to rule. So basically, the things we're going to consider in this unit are what sort of language, characters, and events in the play, and how do they represent the events of the author's day, and how can we interpret those and present them? How are they a product of the culture of Shakespeare? And does the work support or condemn the event? For example, if Shakespeare wanted to support the idea of killing the king, then in Macbeth, Macbeth would have been a successful leader and not died, and then you could see that the play was a message about rebelling against authority. We can also consider how the portrayal criticizes leading political figures of that day. Macbeth tried very hard not to. As a play, it was created to appease a political figure, but there are other works that definitely criticize the leaders of that day. And how does the work consider the traditionally marginalized populations, which will be interesting as we read Othello? So a modern day example of New Historicism is the YA fantasy novel Children of Blood and Bone. It is set in a fantasy setting with Nigerian city names. The author is Nigerian American and felt that there were not many representations of other races and cultures beyond the typical white culture in fantasy novels, and she wanted to see a change. She also was writing amidst a flurry of police shootings against Black people, and she wove in allegories for systemic racism and police brutality as a way to speak out against them. And through those allegories within the story, Adeyemi condemns both of those practices. Anyways, that is an introduction to New Historicism. Hopefully, you